Hare Rama, Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatari. We continue reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23, Text 13. Evam Savira Pravaraha
एवं स वेदा प्रवर
Samyojyatmanam Atmane
संयोज्यात्मानम् आत्मनि
Brahma Bhuto Dridam Kale
ब्रह्मभूतो धृतं काले
Pratyajasvam Kalevaram.
तत्याज स्वं कलेवरम्.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In due course of time, when Pṛthu Mahārāja was to give up his body, he fixed his mind firmly upon the lotus feet of Krishna, and thus completely situated on the Brahmabhuta platform, he gave up the material body. According to a Bengali proverb, whatever spiritual progress one makes in life will be tested at the time of death. In Bhagavad Gita 8.6, it is also confirmed, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajati ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavita. Those who are practicing Krishna consciousness know that their examination will be held at the time of death. If one can remember Krishna at death, he is immediately transferred to Golok Vrindavan or Krishna Lok, and thus his life becomes successful. So we all have to give up the body one day. And Krishna says that whoever can give up the body while thinking of him can go back home, back to Godhead. Back home, back to Godhead. And Pṛthu Mahārāja here is fixing his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. So very specifically, it's not that the Bhagavatam is giving us very, very clear instructions, what we have to do, how we have to do. Think of Krishna, lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna is a person. He has a beautiful transcendental form. He has beautiful lotus feet. Think of Krishna's lotus feet. Fix the mind on Krishna. And this is the liberated state. Said here, completely situated on the Brahmabhuta platform. He completely understood I'm not the body, I'm the soul, and he's fixed his mind on Krishna. Pṛthu Mahārāja, by the grace of Krishna, could understand that the end of his life was near, and thus he became very jubilant and proceeded to completely give up his body on the Brahmabhuta stage by practicing the yogic process. It is thoroughly described in the following verses how one can voluntarily give up his body, this body, and return home back to Godhead. The yogic process practiced by Pṛthu Mahārāja at the time of death accelerates the giving up of this body while one is in sound health physically and mentally. Every devotee desires to give up the body while it is sound physically and mentally. This desire was also expressed by King Kulashekar in his Mukunda Mala Stotra. Krishna Tvadiya Padapankaja Panjaran Adyeva me Vishatamanasaramsha Prana Prayana Samaye Kafavata Pite Katha Kantha Varodhana Vidao Smaranam Kutaste. King Kulashekar wanted to give up his body while in a healthy state, and thus he prayed to Krishna to let him die immediately while he was in good health and while his mind was sound. So King Kulashekar was a great devotee of the Lord, and he has recited this Mukundamala Stotra. And he prayed, let me give up my body. Let me die right now. Because right now my mind is steady. I'm able to control my mind. I will be able to think of Krishna while I'm dying. So that's why he's praying. Because when a man dies, he's generally overpowered by mucus and bile, and thus he chokes. Since it is very difficult to vibrate any sound while choking, it is simply by Krishna's grace that one can chant Hare Krishna at the time of death. So King Kulashekar knows that the time of death is very difficult moment. The body is a fever. It feels like so many thousands or millions of scorpions are biting. It's not a good situation. So he's praying, let me give up my body right now. Right now I can fix my mind on Krishna. So, however, by situating oneself in the Muktasana position, a yogi can immediately give up his body and go to whatever planet he desires. A perfect yogi can give up his body whenever he desires through the practice of yoga. So Srila Prabhupada is saying that although the moment of death is very difficult, by the grace of Krishna, one can chant his name. It's Krishna's grace. We may say, okay, so I know the secret. Now I will chant only when I'm dying. But if we don't practice, how will we chant at the time of death, which is such a difficult position? So that's why we need to practice regularly, constantly hearing and chanting. Samvidyapayum Pashnibhyam
Samvidhyam Vachnibhyam
Vayum Utsarayanchane
Vayum Utsarayanchane
Nabhyam Koshtesha Avasthapya
Nabhyam Kostisva Vasabhya
Shrid Ura Kanthashirshani.
Tripura Kantha Shishani.
When Maharaj Pṛthu practiced a particular yogic sitting posture, he blocked the door of his anus with his ankles, pressed his right and left calves, and gradually raised his life air upward, passing it on to the circle of his navel, up to his heart and throat, and finally pushed it upward to the central position between his two eyebrows. The sitting posture described herein is called Muktasana. In the yoga process, after following the strict regulative principles, controlling, sleeping, eating, and mating, one is allowed to practice the different sitting postures. So this asana is called, but before that is the yam and niyam. The yam and niyam, the do's and the don'ts to control the senses. The ultimate aim of yoga is to enable one to give up this body according to his own free will. One who has attained the ultimate summit of yoga practice can live in the body as long as he likes, or as long as he is not completely perfect, leave the body to go anywhere within or outside the universe. So the yogi, he practices like that. He has got, this powers that he can choose when he wants to die and where he wants to go after he dies based on his consciousness. Some yogis leave their bodies to go to the higher planetary systems and enjoy the material facilities therein. However, intelligent yogis do not wish to waste their time within this material world at all. They do not care for the material facilities in higher planetary systems, but are interested in going directly to the spiritual sky, back home, back to Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada is saying, there are some yogis who go to the higher planets to enjoy because there is more facility to enjoy in the higher planet. But the intelligent yogi, He wants to go back home, back to Godhead, because he knows even higher planets is still the same thing: birth, death, old age, disease. Again, have to take up another body, cannot stay there permanently. From the description in this verse, it appears that Maharaj Pṛthu had no desire to promote himself to the higher planetary systems. He wanted to return home immediately, back to Godhead. Although Maharaj Pṛthu stopped all practice of mystic yoga after realizing Krishna consciousness, he took advantage of his previous practice and immediately placed himself on the Brahma Buddha platform in order to accelerate his return to Godhead. The aim of this particular system of asana, known as the sitting posture for liberation or muktasana, is to attain success in Kundalini Chakra and gradually raise the life from the Muladhara Chakra to the Swadhisthana Chakra, then to the Manipur Chakra, Anahata Chakra, the Vishuddha Chakra, and finally to the Agya Chakra. When the yogi reaches the Agya Chakra between the two eyebrows, he is able to penetrate the Brahma Randhara, or the hole in his skull, and go to any planet he desires, up to the spiritual kingdom of Vaikuntha or Krishna Lok. So, Pṛthu Maharaj, he's a pure devotee of the Lord. He is already situated in his original position. But since he knows this practice, he's just, sitting in this posture. Now we may say, oh my God, I want to go back to Godhead, but I don't know how to do this, raising my life air up higher, higher. And so here, let's read on what Srila Prabhupada has to say. The conclusion is that one has to come to the Brahma Buddha stage for going back to Godhead. However, those who are in Krishna consciousness or who are practicing Bhakti Yoga, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Pada Sevanam, can return to Godhead without even practicing the Muktasana process. So, this is why we are encouraged to take up bhakti, devotional service, because we may not be able to practice or perfect this muktasana. We may not be able to do it properly. We don't know what our situation is in the time of death. So, but the devotee, he does not need to do all this different asana. Just by becoming a devotee, by engaging in devotional service, he can go back home, back to Godhead. The purpose of Muktasana practice is to come to the Brahma Buddha stage, for without being on the Brahma Buddha stage, one cannot be promoted to the spiritual sky. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 14.26, Mam cha yo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityayitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. The bhakti yogi practicing bhakti yoga is always situated on the Brahma Buddha stage, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. If a devotee is able to continue on the Brahma Buddha platform, he enters the spiritual sky automatically after death and returns to Godhead. So a devotee, the pure devotee, he's already liberated. He's on the Brahma Buddha platform, even though he is inside the body. Even while being in this material world, he's liberated. He's completely understood his position with Krishna, his loving relationship with Krishna. His consciousness is pure. He's no more in the body concept. And so he can go back home, back to Godhead. And so by practicing Bhakti Yoga, one can, The Bhakti Yogi practicing Bhakti Yoga is always situated on the Brahma Buddha stage. So the pure devotee is always engaging in Bhakti and is always liberated. He's on the platform of Brahman. Consequently, a devotee need not feel sorry for not having practiced the Kundalini Chakra or not penetrating the 6 chakras one after another. As far as Maharaj Pṛthu was concerned, he had already practiced this process. And since that he did not want to wait for the time when his death would occur naturally, he took advantage of the Shat Chakra penetration process and thus gave up the body according to his own free will and immediately entered the spiritual sky. So he didn't want to wait. That's why he did. So we should not feel sorry. We should continue hearing and chanting, remembering Krishna, worshipping the deity, and in this way go back home, back to Godhead. Any comments? Questions?
Yeah, so previously, Maharaj Pṛthu, he was doing the Paramatma realization, like since he was doing all this, practicing this process,
Yeah, I
right?
think we read a little earlier that he was doing the yoga process.
Yoga process. So that's Paramatma realization, right?
Yes, but Pṛthu Maharaj's position is unique. He had already realized Bhagwan. He was not only on the platform of Paramatma because he is a pure devotee.
Right.
So he understands that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. But he was somehow also following this yoga practice.
Right, right. And how he took advantage. I mean, now, like,
Yeah,
to
that's
speed
right.
up also. Yeah, right. He knew about it,
Yeah,
this
that's right.
practice. So with this, like with the bhakti, he also incorporated this, right?
Yes, yeah, that's right. That's right. So we don't necessarily have to learn
Don't need to.
this. Yeah,
Yes, right.
we don't need to.
Because not easy. It's very hard.
That's what, and imagine in
Very
Kali Yuga
difficult.
where we have this expertise to perfect it,
Yes.
to really get the perfection of it. So for us, it's better we hear and chant. And in this way, we can get perfection. Utsarpayam stutam murdhni
Utsarpayam stutam murtani
krame naveshya nispraha
kramena veshya nispraha
vayum vayo shitaukayam
vayum vayo shito kayam
tejas tejasi ayuyujat.
tejas tejasi ay
In this way, Pṛthu Maharaj gradually raised his air of life to the hole in his skull, whereupon he lost all desire for material existence. Gradually, he merged his air of life with the totality of air, his body with the totality of earth, and the fire within his body with the totality of fire. So it's not an easy skill to acquire, because these elements are there in our body and they are outside the body also: air, water, earth, fire. So he's merging what the element inside with the elements outside. When the spiritual spark, which is described as 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair, is forced into material existence, that spark is covered by gross and subtle material elements. The material body is composed of 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and 3 subtle elements: mind, intelligence, and ego. When one attains liberation, he is freed from these material coverings. So, what are the 2 kinds of coverings the soul has?
gross and subtle.
Yeah, and what is the gross covering?
Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And the elements are mind, intelligence, and ego.
Yeah. So the gross body can be seen.
Yeah.
We can see it, and the subtle we can't see. And so, what is liberation? What
He's
happens
free
at
from
liberation? Yeah,
he's above, na? He's free from these material coverings.
yeah, that's right. So, at death, what happens is we give up the gross body. we will give up the gross body, but the subtle body we are not giving up. And we are taking up another gross body when we are still in the material world. So the mind, intelligence, and ego goes with the soul to another gross body. But when liberation happens, then we are leaving behind even our mind, intelligence, and false ego.
Okay.
So indeed, success in yoga involves getting free from these material coverings and entering into spiritual existence. Lord Buddha's teachings of nirvana are based on this principle. Lord Buddha instructed his followers to give up these material coverings by means of meditation and yoga. Lord Buddha did not give any information about the soul, but if one follows his instructions strictly, he will ultimately become free from the material coverings and attain nirvana. Means Lord Buddha also gave this instruction that give up your gross and subtle body. And the soul, of course, is never going to die. We are eternal. Whether we know it or no, we are eternal. When a living entity gives up the material coverings, he remains a spirit soul. This spirit soul must enter into the spiritual sky to merge into the Brahman effulgence. Unfortunately, unless the living entity has information of the spiritual world and the Vaikunthas, there is a 99.9% chance of his falling down again into material existence. There is, however, a small chance of being promoted to a spiritual planet from the Brahman effulgence or the Brahmajyoti. So we can see that how even if one does so much difficult austerities, penances, reaches the Vaikuntha sky, if one does not have information of the spiritual planets, the Vaikuntha world, one will come down. Almost surely, 99.9 means it's just a 0.1%, which is such a small chance that one from the Brahmajyoti can enter into the spiritual planet. This Brahmajyoti is considered by impersonalists to be without variety, and the Buddhists consider it to be void. In either case, whether one accepts the spiritual sky as being without variety or void, there is none of the spiritual bliss which is enjoyed in the spiritual planets, the Vaikunthas or Krishna Loka. In the absence of varieties of enjoyment, the spirit soul gradually feels an attraction to enjoy a life of bliss, and not having any information of Krishna Lok or Vaikuntha Lok, he naturally falls down to material activities in order to enjoy material varieties. So we can see that the desire to enjoy is with the soul, not with the body. We are thinking, oh, as long as in the material body, I have this desire to enjoy. But once I give up the body, then I will not have this desire to enjoy. I become zero. But the body is dead. We have seen dead bodies and they can't move. So how can the body enjoy? So the enjoying spirit is with the soul, not with the body. And even if the soul reaches up to the Brahman, but has no information that there is the spiritual world, that there is the spiritual planets, because the desire to enjoy is always there with the soul will come down to the material world to enjoy. The soul is Ananda Mayobhyasa. It's always seeking pleasure. So with very difficulty one can reach the Brahman, but if one does not know of Krishna, of the spiritual planets, one falls down. It's such a pity, no? Mm. So we need to hear and chant, understand the spiritual world, have a desire to go to the spiritual world, to the spiritual planets, never to come back again to the material world. Are there any questions or comments?
So for Buddhism, that means what? Where there's nothing spoken about the soul. That means it's void. There's no soul.
Yeah,
what?
Buddha never spoke about soul, or
Soul.
God. He
Yeah.
didn't speak about these things.
Right. Like, okay, you get nirvana, you attain, but the soul, what happens? There's no soul.
Yeah, but in reality, we cannot not exist, right?
Yeah.
So that's why Prabhupada is mentioning, so those souls, even if they reach the Brahmajyoti, because okay, they've suppose now they gotten purified and now they're reaching the Brahmajyoti, but because they don't have information of the spiritual planets, they will again come back to the material world. Because the soul always wants to enjoy. So even though they think that there is no soul, but there is nirvana, even after they attain nirvana, or we say mukti or moksha, we will come back to the material world.
Yeah.
Mhm. And thank you so much. Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur
Thank
Bhakta
you.
Vrinda ki jai. Hare